Ethan Carter had long considered himself an ordinary cargo pilot, a man of humble aspirations, content to explore the cosmos in his battered old transport ship, ferrying goods for obscure corporations. He felt a quiet satisfaction whenever he charted a successful course through hyperspace, delivering vital supplies to distant outposts, and collecting just enough pay to finance his next run. But on this particular flight, fate would rewrite the trajectory of his life, plunging him into an odyssey that tested his resilience, reshaped his sense of purpose, and bound his future to a dying race of mysterious alien huntresses whose captivating allure concealed devastating powers and a desperate need for survival. Alarms screamed through the cockpit, bright red pulses of emergency lighting dancing across Ethan's face as he fought desperately with the controls. The NAV computer had flickered out at the worst possible time, mid-jump through a suspicious segment of hyperspace that, according to his charts, was pocked with gravitational anomalies. Something, an impact he couldn't identify, had rattled the entire vessel, sending shockwaves of energy through its hull. He felt the engines sputter and fail, felt his breath catch in his throat as the ship tumbled out of hyperspace like a wounded beast thrown from the jaws of a great cosmic predator. "Come on," he muttered under his breath, knuckles whitening on the throttle. "Stay with me, old girl." He managed to bring the reeling transport into a half-controlled descent, but every red light on the console told him things were far worse than he realized. Navigation was destroyed, life support was on the brink of failure, and the engines had barely enough thrust left to keep them from a freefall. His vessel, the Starfinder, crackled and groaned as it sliced through the atmosphere of an uncharted planet, wreathed in violet swirls of cloud that Ethan had never beheld in any star chart or log. He felt gravity's merciless tug intensify. Then came the howling wind, the jolt of turbulence that threatened to wrench the ship apart, and the horrifying screech of metal scraping something massive, trees, or rock, or possibly both. He braced himself, teeth clenched tight, heart hammering like a frantic drum. The crash was ferocious, yet strangely merciful, for although it ripped through the hull, the dense canopy of enormous alien trees cushioned part of the ship's descent. Ethan recalled a cacophony of snapping branches, deafening shrieks of shearing metal, and searing jolts that jarred his bones. Eventually, darkness rushed in, swallowing all sight and sound. When he came to, the cockpit was quiet aside from the angry hiss of leaking gas. Sparks danced in the ruins of the control panels. The battered pilot fought through a haze of pain to unbuckle his harness, flinching as injured muscles protested. Despite the carnage, he quickly realized he was alive. His seat, twisted and half-collapsed, had saved him from being thrown against the windshield. Raw adrenaline soon forced him to check himself for wounds. A few cuts and bruises, nothing critical, although every limb groaned in protest at the slightest movement. "Still here," he murmured, exhaling in relief. Somehow, he pulled himself free of the cockpit, only to discover the vessel's interior was nearly unrecognizable. The cargo bay had torn open, strewing crates and salvage across the purple-hued forest floor. Cracked steel beams groaned precariously overhead. Holding onto shards of twisted metal, Ethan slid down, wincing at the pain, until at last he emerged from the wreckage into the open air. His feet found stability on strange, soft ground. The scene around him was surreal, a thick forest of towering trees, their trunks covered in a deep amethyst bark. Tendrils of pale mist drifted among enormous, vibrant leaves that shimmered with iridescent colors, shifting from shades of lavender to peacock green as beams of alien sunlight filtered through the canopy. An unfamiliar warmth caressed his skin, indicating a breathable atmosphere. He thanked luck or providence, perhaps both, that his new environment would not suffocate him. A jagged piece of hull jutted out from the ground, and he found his survival pack caught on its corner. It was battered but intact. The precious item contained emergency rations, a medkit, and, of particular importance, the components needed to repair his distress beacon. Despite the swirling chaos, Ethan's training clicked into place, fueling his will to survive. He rummaged for a handheld scanner, turning it on with the faint hope of finding any sign of civilization. His thoughts were jolted by movement just beyond the edge of his vision. The underbrush stirred, parted, and then dozens of luminous eyes emerged from the gloom, reflecting eerie neon glimmers. His pulse quickened, hands creeping toward the pistol strapped to his thigh. As the watchers came closer, Ethan realized they were not mere animals. They were tall, humanoid figures with shimmering blue skin, each exuding an otherworldly grace. Their dark, flowing hair blended seamlessly into the organic fabric draped around them, a living weave of leaves and bioluminescent vines that accentuated rather than concealed their muscular, elegant forms. Together, they emanated a strange power, a quiet tension, and an unmistakable sense of curiosity mixed with caution. Leading them was a regal figure, taller than the rest, whose feline-like eyes glowed with an emerald hue. In a stance that radiated confidence, she lifted a hand. A shimmer of energy pulsed around her fingertips. Ethan recognized it as a telepathic wave, a phenomenon he'd only ever read about. Some species, gifted with advanced mental abilities, could shape thoughts, bridging linguistic barriers instantly. In his mind, he heard words, soft yet commanding. "Put down your weapon. We mean you no harm." But there was an undercurrent to the message, an echo that spoke of lethal capability, of warriors whose kindness was balanced by a readiness to strike. Ethan felt a chill creep along his spine. Slowly, he lifted his hands away from his sidearm. "Who are you?" he asked out loud, lips dry with anxiety. The leader inclined her head in acknowledgement. "I am Neris," the thought voice clarified, her lips unmoving. "You have trespassed on our land, but we see you are injured, your vessel destroyed. Lower your guard, and we shall do the same." Ethan nodded cautiously, deciding that cooperation was better than confrontation. Neris advanced, her companions close behind, their fierce gazes studying the intruder in their midst. A gentle glow emanated from Neris's palm, and before Ethan could protest, she brushed that hand across his brow. He felt a soothing tingle, as though healing waves of energy spread through his skin, easing his bruises. "Thank you," he managed, though wariness still tugged at his heart. One of the other alien women, whose black hair bore vibrant streaks of teal, approached to inspect his surroundings. She stared down at the twisted remains of his ship, eyes blazing with interest at the technology, at the unusual markings of a visitor from the stars. Ethan realized they were extraordinarily advanced in some fields, like telepathy or energy manipulation, yet he saw no overt machinery. Their clothing was organic, their weapons, if they had any, were not obvious, and their dwellings were nowhere in sight. Despite their apparent civility, a faint alarm in Ethan's mind refused to quiet. He recalled stories of xenobiologists, of travelers who encountered seemingly benevolent beings, only to discover hidden agendas. Then, in a flash, he remembered his distress beacon. He turned to glance at the battered hull section behind him, eyes darting in search of the metallic cylinder containing the crucial transmitter. If he could repair it, maybe he could signal a rescue, or at least re-establish contact with known space. But Neris's eyes narrowed. "Forget your beacon," she whispered into his head, that mental voice laced with a warning. "We need to speak of more important things." Before he could open his mouth to protest, a wave of indistinct fragrance drifted through the air. It was sweet and cloying, tinged with exotic spice. At once, he felt his pulse slow, his limbs grow heavy, mind sinking into a heady dizziness. The forest, the crash, the aliens, everything began to spin. He tried to lift an arm, to fight, but the hypnotic perfume overwhelmed him, robbing him of his will. He heard distant voices, Neris's calm authority, others chiming in with excitement, and felt hands, gentle yet firm, catch him before he collapsed. The world bled into darkness. When Ethan awoke, he found himself in a chamber that glowed with a soft bioluminescence. The walls pulsed with a gentle heartbeat, as though alive, exhaling warmth and fresh oxygen. Translucent vines spiraled across the surfaces, forming patterns reminiscent of an organic tapestry. He realized his wrists were bound by thin filaments of that same living material. Strange energy waves coiled around him, rendering him powerless to break free. His first impulse was panic, but as clarity returned, he took inventory of his situation. He was unhurt, still clothed, and in what seemed to be an underground space, for no windows revealed the forest above. The air was cool, scented with the same delicate spice that had rendered him unconscious, yet less potent now. Just enough to keep him docile, perhaps. Tentative footsteps approached. An alien woman stepped into view. She was slender, with high cheekbones and mesmerizing violet eyes. Her skin glimmered in the flickering blue of the chamber, and her hair seemed interwoven with tiny glowing blossoms. She knelt beside him, scanning his face with an almost scientific precision, as if evaluating his health. Then, with a faint smile, she spoke aloud in perfectly articulated English. "Are you in pain?" Ethan's mouth felt dry. "No, not exactly," he managed, blinking against the gentle light. "Who are you?" "I am Vena," she replied. Her voice held an unusual mix of warmth and curiosity. "I have studied your language from the echoes in your mind. We mean you no harm, but you are a resource we cannot squander. It is vital that you remain, at least until our purpose is fulfilled." A flicker of anger and fear coursed through him, but the memory of Neris's healing touch and the hush of their telepathic speech cautioned him to remain calm, at least for the moment. "What do you want with me?" Vena's eyes lowered, and for a heartbeat, he saw sadness. "We are the last of our people, the Zamans. Once, our civilization thrived on this planet, but a great calamity befell us. Our men vanished. Some were destroyed in the Great Wars. Others fled beyond the star lanes when the corruption began. Generations have passed, and we are all that remains." She paused, a trembling sigh escaping. "Our species stands on the brink of extinction. We are huntresses, defenders, scientists, and healers, but we lack the means to continue our lineage. You, Ethan Carter, are unique. Your biology resonates with an energy we believed lost. You could help restore what we once had." Ethan's bound hands clenched. He remembered rumors that in far-flung corners of the galaxy, entire races sought human partners for genetic reasons, for adaptability or fertility. "I won't be used," he said, voice shaking with indignation. Vena nodded, as though expecting his resistance. "We know. That is why we prepared the pheromone to ensure you would not harm us or escape. We cannot force you to cooperate, but we cannot release you either, not while hope for our people remains." His heart pounded. Yet beneath the fear, a spark of empathy flickered. He thought of their plight, of how they must see him, a last chance, or a precious resource in a desperate fight against oblivion. Then, abruptly, the chamber brightened, and footsteps echoed along a corridor. Neris strode in, posture stiff, expression regal, flanked by several others. Her mental voice cut through the hush like a clarion call. "It is time." Vena rose, helping Ethan to his feet. The vines around his wrists loosened but did not vanish. He was marched through winding corridors that glistened with living resin, past archways shaped by the planet's organic technology. Enormous roots twisted overhead, forming rib-like structures that supported ceilings of shimmering luminescent film. The design was unlike anything he'd seen, a blend of natural aesthetics and advanced bioengineering. At last, they emerged into a grand chamber that opened wide in every direction. A circular platform occupied the center, ringed by towering alien columns. Some cast illusions of starlight upon the dome above, while others pulsed with multi-hued currents of energy. Gathered there were dozens of alien women, each radiating quiet awe. Murmurs coursed through the crowd when they saw Ethan escorted by Neris and Vena. He recognized an undercurrent of excitement, a tension of anticipation. It was a ceremony, though not quite any he could place. Then, a wave of clarity from Neris's mind explained the truth. "We shall compete to see who may claim him. The rite of renewal begins now." Compete? Claim? A hot flush of alarm rippled through him. This was no mere introduction. It was a trial, an ancient selection process. Neris glanced at Vena, her lips curling into a confident smile. "We must see who among us is worthy, for the blood of our future depends on it." At that, the women fanned out, forming a large circle, leaving Ethan at the center, flanked by Neris and Vena. He glimpsed others, one with braided hair of midnight hue, her form lithe, eyes burning with determination, another with swirling tattoos on her arms, her stance akin to a warrior poised for battle. There was also Lyra, whose presence radiated raw strength, her gaze never leaving Ethan's face. A hush fell, broken only by the rhythmic drum of hearts, human and alien alike. Then, with a subtle gesture from Neris, the trials began. They tested their ability to track and hunt, leaping through illusions conjured by telepathic projection, demonstrating agility and cunning. They displayed feats of energy manipulation, weaving strands of glowing auras through the air, forming intricate shapes or destructive bursts of force that shimmered like lightning. Some performed feats of engineering and scientific acumen, showing how they could shape living materials into tools of survival. Ethan watched, transfixed. Each participant, it seemed, was an expert in her domain. Some thrived in the forest's labyrinthine growth, bending vines to ensnare illusions of monstrous beasts. Others excelled at harnessing psychic powers, forging shields of shimmering energy that crackled with primal might. Through it all, Ethan realized this society of women was not idle or primitive. They possessed a formidable heritage, a melding of technology and biology beyond anything he had seen in human settlements. Yet, there was also an unmistakable tension beneath the spectacle. He perceived their desperation, their fierce determination to win not just a contest, but a chance at survival. In them, he sensed the sorrow of a dying race, and a spark of hope newly ignited by his arrival. After hours of intense demonstrations, the circle drew tight once more. Neris then stepped forward, her features calm, though her voice resonated with an authority that prickled Ethan's skin. "We have tested your prowess," she declared, addressing the gathered contenders. "Now, each of you must present your vision for our future, how you would guide our people, and how you would unite with him." Her gaze fell on Ethan. There can be only one who stands at his side as the primary mate, though in time, he may share his gift more freely. A shiver crawled down Ethan's spine. This was all happening too fast, too intensely. He thought of running, but the ring of powerful huntresses, combined with the heavy knowledge that there was nowhere to go, stilled his feet. One by one, they spoke of their dreams for the Zemayan future. Some voiced grand plans for conquest, hoping to re-establish the old empire, restoring once famed citadels. Others yearned to rebuild cosmic fleets and seek out their vanished men across the stars. Ethan listened, searching for sincerity, for a hint that any of them saw him as more than a mere tool. Finally, Vena stepped forward. Her voice, when she spoke, held a quiet conviction that stirred something in Ethan's heart. It is not enough to rebuild. We must learn from our mistakes. We must welcome new perspectives, not only from the missing men of our race, but from outsiders like Ethan, whose adaptability might teach us how to avoid the corruption of the past. He is no captive. He is a partner. Let us forge a bond built on unity, on scientific discovery, on the exchange of knowledge. The chamber fell silent. A dozen piercing gazes turned to Ethan, who sensed the need to respond. He swallowed hard, searching for words. Finally, he managed, "I didn't choose to come here, but now that I'm here, I see you're in need. I don't want to be forced, but I'm willing to help if you'll treat me fairly, as a friend or an ally." Tension rippled through the assembled crowd. Neris studied him, her feline eyes narrowed, as though weighing the sincerity in his voice. Then, with graceful finality, she turned to Vena. "Claim him, if he will have you." The words echoed through the chamber, a pronouncement both celebratory and solemn. Vena approached Ethan, hand extended. He felt that subtle telepathic invitation, a cautious entreaty. Overwhelmed by relief, confusion, and a strange flicker of hope, he took her hand. In the weeks that followed, Ethan found himself gradually integrated into Zemayan society. Though Neris remained the nominal leader, Vena took a central role in guiding him through their cities, abandoned but not forgotten, where half-buried ruins were entwined with living vines, and massive statues of ancient leaders gazed solemnly upon the forest floor. The aliens' capital, once a magnificent hub of cosmic trade, lay in disrepair, overtaken by nature and haunted by memories of the great wars that had shattered their golden age. An uneasy calm lingered, as if the entire civilization held its breath, awaiting revival or final collapse. The few remaining structures that still functioned did so through a synergy of bioluminescent technology and telekinetic architecture. Buildings would reshape themselves to accommodate those who lived within, shifting walls or creating passageways on command. Past generations of Zamaeans had harnessed the planet's living essence to fuel their machines, but with the catastrophic loss of their men, many city sectors lay dormant, starved of the vital energies once provided through symbiotic bonds. Ethan found that everywhere he went, eyes followed. Some stared with reverence, as though he were a messiah figure. Others radiated suspicion or envy. The reality of being claimed by Venus set in, yet it was not as simple as he first assumed. Although she was designated his primary mate, the ritual implied a broader bonding. Others, especially Lyra, expressed interest in forging deeper connections in time. He was startled to learn about their polygamous traditions, a product of survival strategies from generations past. It made sense. If they were to repopulate, one male might be expected to bond with multiple partners. Yet the notion unsettled him, for human customs had prepared him for a very different way of life. Vena, sensing his hesitation, reassured him telepathically that everything would proceed with his consent. She seemed determined to prove that while he was essential, he was not merely a means to an end. Late one evening, while examining an ancient console that hummed with faint power, Ethan stumbled upon a hidden archive. Vena watched with fascination as he coaxed the device back to life with a portable power cell from his survival pack. Runes and holographic images flickered to life, revealing a grim history of the Zamaean downfall. They discovered references to a malevolent entity, something that offered the Zamaeans knowledge and power, but at a dreadful price. It seeped into their technology, corrupted their energies, and eventually drove many of their kind to madness. As war ignited among them, entire fleets were lost, and the male population disappeared, either fleeing to distant star systems or perishing under the weight of the entity's influence. Vena's face grew pale as she read the logs, tears gathering at the corners of her luminescent eyes. "This is what doomed us," she whispered. "All that remains are ghosts of our greatest folly." Ethan gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe we can fix it. We humans have our own stories of overcoming past mistakes, though we also have quite a few mistakes yet to solve." She turned, gratitude flooding her gaze. "I believe in you, Ethan Carter. Perhaps your crash landing here was not an accident at all." With renewed determination, they shared their findings with Neris, Lyra, and a select few in positions of authority. A clandestine council formed, dedicated to uncovering how to permanently banish the ancient evil. Deep in the planet's interior, colossal vaults sealed centuries ago held advanced defense mechanisms, weaponry that harnessed psychokinetic energy, once used to keep the entity at bay. If they could reactivate these systems, perhaps they could purge its lingering corruption from the planet, ensuring a safer future for all. Ethan took the lead on repairing the machinery, adapting human engineering principles to merge with the Zamaean living technology. It was a delicate task. The consoles pulsed with organic filaments, responding to thought waves in intricate ways. One needed both mechanical skill and a measure of telepathic aptitude to calibrate them. Vena was invaluable in this regard, her scientific prowess perfectly complementing Ethan's mechanical know-how. Lyra, meanwhile, trained new Huntresses to prepare for potential conflict. Word began to spread that the malevolent presence, stirred by the renewed activation of these ancient systems, might awaken fully. Some whispered that if it did, they would be forced to wage a final war against the darkness that had nearly destroyed them once before. In the midst of this flurry of activity, Ethan struggled with the weight of responsibility. Each night, he collapsed onto a bed crafted from living fibers, which molded to his body's contours, arms and legs too weary to move. Vena would often join him, offering comfort, her telepathic presence a balm to his tired spirit. He knew, too, that Lyra hovered at the edge of his life, her admiration for him growing with every passing day. The knowledge that he might soon be asked to share himself more broadly, to help ensure the continuity of their race, kept him awake, wrestling with his sense of identity. It was during one of these nights, illuminated by the twin moons overhead, that Ethan heard a distant rumble echo through the subterranean corridors. He shot upright, adrenaline spiking. Vena stirred beside him, eyes snapping open, pupils narrowing with alarm. "Something's stirring," she murmured. He scrambled to dress, heart pounding. By the time they reached the upper halls, the commotion had risen to a frenetic pitch. Huntresses rushed to and fro, exchanging telepathic updates, while arcs of luminous energy danced across the city's organic spires. Neris stood at a high balcony, face grave, scanning the horizon with her glowing eyes. Lyra approached, bowing her head hastily in greeting. "We can feel it, it's awakening. The entity, the planet's energy is shifting." Ethan swallowed. "Are we prepared?" "As prepared as we can be," Lyra answered, her voice firm, though a tremor in her gaze betrayed the dread beneath her stoic facade. Neris exhaled, the tension in her posture betraying her own fears. "It seeks to reclaim the souls that once bent to its will. We must not allow it." "Ethan, have you finished work on the planetary defenses?" He nodded. "We've reactivated about 60%. The other sections still offline. But we can reroute power. Vena and I just need time." "Time is a luxury we do not have," Neris said. "Look." She gestured toward the horizon, where a strange phenomenon writhed in the sky. A swirling mass of blackness, shot through with crimson streaks, twisting among the distant purple treetops like a malevolent storm. Even from this distance, Ethan sensed a chill creeping along his skin, as though the very air vibrated with hatred and malice. Vena tugged at his sleeve. "Come, we'll finish the calibrations." They raced through corridors to the ancient vault. The organic walls pulsed with frenetic energy, reacting to the upheaval in the planet's aura. As they passed, ghostly apparitions of past horrors flashed in Ethan's mind. Echoes of the wars that ravaged this place, illusions of the anguish that once consumed the Zamans. Inside the vault, the main console glowed, screens flickering with alien symbols. Vena placed her hands on the biomorphic interface, eyes sliding shut as she reached out with her mind. Ethan followed the sequence they'd rehearsed, cross-wiring a final panel from his salvaged power cells into the living circuitry. A hum, faint at first, then building in intensity, filled the vault. The ancient defenses stirred from centuries of slumber. Towers across the city burst to life, arcs of protective energy weaving a grand barrier that spanned the skies in a shimmering lattice. Ethan felt a surge of triumph, but also of dread, for now the entity would surely respond. Moments later, a thunderous roar rent the air, coming from outside the city. The monstrous swirl of blackness advanced, colliding with the newly formed barrier. Pulses of scarlet lightning struck the lattice, forging violent bursts of sparks. Beneath the barrier's glow, the forest contorted, giant trees twisting as though possessed by a dark hand. Ethan heard the cries of women battling monstrous shapes that leaped from the corrupted undergrowth. Lyra's voice came through telepathically, ragged with the strain of combat. "We're under attack in the outer sector. We need reinforcements." Vena nodded at Ethan, her expression resolute. "Go," she commanded softly. "I will maintain the defenses from here. The calibrations must not fail." Ethan sprinted out of the vault, heart thundering like never before. Armed with a salvaged plasma rifle adapted for the planet's environment, he ran through trembling corridors until he emerged onto a broad street of living stone. There, he beheld a sight both majestic and terrifying. Dozens of huntresses locked in combat against twisted creatures fashioned from shadow and vine, their eyes burning with an infernal light. The barriers overhead crackled, battered by the unearthly storm. Lyra swung a curved blade wreathed in shimmering energy, slicing through an advancing monstrosity. Blood, thick and black, splattered onto the ground, hissing as it met the living floor. She spotted Ethan, beckoning him to her side. Gripping the plasma rifle, he fired at another abomination, searing it with a concentrated burst of light. It writhed, letting out a screech before collapsing into a puddle of black goo that seeped into the cracks. The adrenaline and terror swirling through Ethan's system felt sharper than any experience he'd known, yet an unexpected camaraderie with these warrior women fueled his courage. They fought side by side, drawing from one another's strength. And above, the swirling darkness roared again, launching a renewed assault. The barrier flickered dangerously, threatening to buckle under the onslaught. A telepathic call from Vena reached them all. "The entity is too strong. We need more energy to keep the barrier stable. I cannot hold it alone." Ethan realized that if the barrier collapsed entirely, the city and every living Zamayan would be consumed by the malevolent force. He grit his teeth, scanning the war-torn street, mind racing. If only there was a way to divert additional power, or to summon help. Then, as if in response to his desperate thought, a flash blazed in the sky. Past the swirling blackness, shapes appeared, vessels descending through the tumult, engines roaring against the churning wind. For an astonished moment, Ethan thought it must be a rescue from human space. But then he saw the silhouette of alien craft reminiscent of the archaic designs shown in Zemayan archives. A new wave of psychic energy flooded the air, tangling with the entity's hold. From these craft emerged figures, tall and lithe, with the same shimmering blue skin as the Huntresses, men. Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief. The lost Zemayans, or perhaps their descendants, had returned, drawn by the psychic storm and the awakened presence of the ancient evil. Chaos erupted as the newcomers joined the fray, channeling energy from their ships to bolster the city's defenses. In the swirling confusion, Ethan glimpsed men who seemed just as formidable as their female counterparts, though hardened by centuries of exile. Their eyes flashed with recognition and sorrow. They had come home to a world they once fled or had never known, but now could not abandon in its greatest hour of need. Bolstered by the reinforcements, Vena intensified the barrier, weaving the newfound male energy into the lattice. Arcs of power flared from the city's spires, knitting the protective field back together. Meanwhile, on the ground, Huntresses and the returned men fought side by side, hacking and blasting away at the entity's monstrous minions. Ethan found himself in the midst of it all, bridging two species, human and Zemayan, male and female, present and past. An unspoken bond linked him to them now. He channeled that sense of unity, refusing to falter. With Lyra's help, he gunned down wave after wave of corrupted creatures, each kill forging a step closer to victory. Finally, with a thunderous crack, a massive surge of energy erupted from the barrier. White-hot flames of psionic power erupted skyward, driving into the heart of the swirling darkness. A shriek, both deafening and otherworldly, tore through the atmosphere. The entity convulsed, writhing against the onslaught of combined willpower. Then, in a blinding cascade of sparks and swirling shadows, it was gone, banished, torn apart by the unity it had once corrupted. A hush fell, broken only by the ragged breaths of warriors all around. The storm dispersed, revealing a pale blue sky tinted by the planet's twin suns. Where once a nightmare had boiled, now only the gentle wind carried the sense of forest and victory. In the aftermath, tears mixed with laughter as the returning males reunited with the surviving females. Families discovered each other across a gulf of centuries. Neris, stoic and proud, embraced a figure Ethan recognized as her long-lost brother, tears streaming down her regal face. Others gathered to weep and share stories, forging new bonds and rekindling old traditions. Worn from the battle, Ethan sank to his knees on the cracked living pavement, exhaling a shuddering breath. Vena approached, lifting him gently to his feet. "It is over," she whispered. "The darkness is gone, driven away by our shared resolve. We owe you much." "It wasn't just me," he said, voice trembling with relief. He had the scene of joyful reunions. Everyone fought. Everyone came together. Her gaze flickered to the returning Zemayan men. "We never believed they would come back. Perhaps they felt the shift in the cosmos, the stirring of that old evil. Or perhaps they sensed you, Ethan Carter, your arrival. Your fierce determination that awakened our defenses. In any case, they have arrived, and our people will survive." Lyra joined them, shoulders sagging from the wounds of battle, but eyes alight with happiness. "So what now?" she asked. Ethan looked at them both, feeling an unexpected warmth flow through his heart. "Now we rebuild," he said. Together. Time passed, bringing renewal across the planet. The once sleeping city stirred with life as returning males and existing females worked alongside Ethan, discovering new uses for both the ancient Zemayan technology and the various innovations Ethan had introduced. Buildings once half-submerged in earth were lifted and restored. Bioluminescent lights glowed more vibrantly than ever, fueled by the revitalized energies that surged through the planet now that the ancient corruption had been purged. The new generation of huntresses and hunters trained side by side, establishing a balance not seen in centuries. Vena continued her research, aided by newly arrived Zemayan scientists, forging a bridge between the advanced knowledge of old and the salvageable elements from Ethan's ship. They began to craft a new starship prototype, one that merged living architecture with human engineering. The dream of rejoining galactic society no longer seemed so distant. As for Ethan, he found a strange equilibrium in his life among the Zemayans. He was no longer an outsider, no longer just a pilot or an accidental visitor. He carried the title of Chosen, a reference to the rite of renewal, and also served as a liaison, teaching both men and women about humanity's ways, while embracing the customs of this newly united civilization. It was not always easy. Zemayan culture diverged sharply from the human customs he was raised with. Their polygamous relationships and telepathic bonds demanded a fluidity of mind that challenged his assumptions. Yet, with Vena's gentle guidance and Lyra's unwavering support, he gradually learned to navigate these complexities. In time, he grew close not only to Vena but to Lyra and others, forging what could be described as a familial nexus, rooted in understanding, respect, and the shared goal of giving birth to a new era for the Zemayans. If ever he felt the old anxieties of captivity, he had only to remember how they had fought side by side, how he had chosen to remain of his own accord, forging a union that transcended mere biology. Their children, born with hybrid traits of both human and Zemayan lineage, embodied this bright horizon. Some bore faintly glowing skin or subtle telekinetic talent, while others inherited the relentless curiosity that was so distinctly human. They played among the rejuvenated forests, climbing once barren branches that now teemed with fruit and blossoms, illusions of war and corruption relegated to the annals of history. One such day, Ethan and Vena walked hand in hand through a garden of living vines that produced glowing orbs of sweet fruit. The air was warm, suffused with soft breezes. Nearby, Lyra laughed as she tried to corral a group of giggling children darting between the vines. Above them, twin suns cast golden rays across the city's rooftops, where spires of bioengineered stone shimmered with vibrant patterns. "I never imagined my life would take this turn," Ethan confessed, exhaling contentedly. "Crashing here, nearly dying, meeting all of you. I was just a pilot with cargo to deliver." Vena's lips curved into a gentle smile. "Sometimes, the cosmos has its own designs. Perhaps all of this was meant to happen, to save our race, and to give you a home you never dreamed of." He nodded, watching their children scamper by. Then he felt a soft telepathic touch, a familiar presence that brought comfort. From across the courtyard, Neris caught his gaze and inclined her head in a respectful gesture. She, too, had found a renewed purpose, focusing her leadership on uniting the old and newly returned factions. The city was now a tapestry of stories weaving seamlessly together, all of it culminating in a shared mission to restore what once was lost, and to strive for something even greater. They paused at the edge of a balcony that overlooked a wide plaza, where merchants hawked fresh produce grown from the revitalized land. A group of male and female Zemayans tested refurbished hover discs, a relic of earlier times that had once soared among the planet's towering trees. Soft laughter and conversation filled the air, mingling with the gentle hum of the living architecture. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, remembering the day he crashed, the swirl of alarms, and the suffocating fear that had consumed him. How far he had come, no longer a solitary wanderer, but an essential piece in a grand tapestry of rebirth. Through the storms of conflict, trials of survival, and battles against an ancient evil, he had found purpose and belonging. Wrapping an arm around Vena's shoulder, he gazed out over the revitalized city. "I think," he whispered, "this is exactly where I'm meant to be." She leaned her head against his, the warmth of her presence and the soft glow of her aura comforting him in a way he'd never thought possible. "Yes," she murmured, "this is home, our home." And so, under the light of twin suns, with laughter echoing in the courtyard and the promise of a flourishing tomorrow, Ethan Carter stood as more than a survivor of a tragic crash. He was a husband, father, leader, and bridge between worlds. The Zemayans, no longer a dying race, entered a new dawn, guided by hope, unity, and the shared dream of forging a better future, free at last from the shadows of the past. A happy ending was written in the stars, hidden in the swirl of cosmic fate, and it now shone brightly upon them all.